What is it that you feel about comics in particular as an art form, as opposed to film, as opposed to music or anything else? What is it about comics that seems to connect so deeply? Because you've said that a number of people you talked about being deeply affected or deeply influenced by comics they had read as kids.
Right, and interesting, in talking to the creators, almost to a person, they said, we were trying to tell an entertaining story about real people. I think that's an effective way to explore spirituality. We live our lives in story, in narrative, beginning, middle, and we're real people doing this, not sanitized characters. I maybe mention more about that later, some of the traps that we fall into in Christian fiction. But I think comic books that affected, and all the creators said that they've met people just in almost tears, meeting them, that your comic book saved my life or inspired me to go on and start this charity and things like that. I think there is a very intimate reading style where there is image, we're visual people, there are gaps, and reading at least used to be a very intimate experience. We often would read these comics alone, and then I think the serial nature also was an interesting component. You had to wait a month for the next issue to come out, or 2 months, and so it was this ongoing part of your life where you were following this adventure, and one of the few parallel art forms would be soap operas. Again, a visual media genre with continued stories. It's interesting. I'm wondering how that's going to be affected when most people just buy a 6 or 12 issue run in a trade paperback. I mean, that's how I buy most of my comic books nowadays. But they were these stories, and especially with Marvel comics, they were these stories of real people with real problems. I say real people, they were fictional characters, but at least compared to other comic book characters, Peter Parker had the struggles he had to overcome, and I think we identified with them, or even with the Incredible Hulk. The Hulk of Herb Trimpe's era, and Roy Thomas and Stan Lee writing at that time, after Tales of Astonish especially. These weren't characters I wish I was. It wasn't like DC, I wish I was Superman, or I wish I was fast as the Flash. You empathized with these characters. You felt sorry for these characters. You were drawn into their lives. And I think as you saw them face dilemmas, but still do the right thing, it inspired many people to do the right thing when life, handed them a bunch of lessons.
Well, it is, I've had people come up to me and tell me about shows that I wrote. Now I'm getting to the stage of my life where typically it's, I grew up with your stuff, and I turned my teenage son onto it, and I'm going, thank you very much for making me feel old. But it is, we do, art is presentational. Art takes ideas, feelings, emotions, and it shows them, or it depicts them at least, even if it's music. Even architecture can create an emotion or take something and express it in a, no pun intended, concrete form. It is one of the biggest challenges to get something more than just a series of flashy events into a narrative. And we do try to find links in our narratives. We do try to hook things together. One of the theories on what dreams are is that dreams are random firings in our brain while we're asleep, but our brain has to make sense of them. And so our brain creates a narrative to associate all of these images, all of these feelings together. That's why you have seemingly bizarre, unrelated things somehow fitting together in the context of the dream. I would say of all the art forms, though, film is probably the most dreamlike. Because only in film can something literally morph that instant. Can it stop being one thing and start being another? Can time speed up and slow down? Even in the comics form, where you can go, or the written form where you can go back, where you can make an allusion to something that had happened. Film is always happening right now.
Right.
And there's no past tense in film. So, how do you take, you have the immediacy of film, and then you've also got what they call the illusion of reality versus the reality of illusion. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, one school of thought says a film creates a reality as you watch it. It creates reality, rather, it creates something that you accept as real. And the other theory is that whatever the film projects, no matter how unreal it is, it becomes a reality.
It's real, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, basically, and not only am I a producer and a director, I'm also a writer, and I started as an actor, so I kind of got the whole gamut going, not to pump myself up here, but to illustrate a point. When writing a movie, for those of you that don't know, you're only supposed to be using simple present tense, which alludes to what Buzz was saying. So, he walks out the door, and you can film that. That's easy to film, right? He runs out the door. Now, maybe he runs out the door because the bear is chasing him across the hall. But it's all happening in front of you, and you have to visualize that. And going back to the gap theory, what do I write? What do I put in a movie? Because as a writer, I may not direct my film. I may not produce my film. Someone else is going to do that. So I have to visualize what I think the story would be, and by the time it gets to the screen, it may be an entirely different thing. There's a theory out there that you write a movie, there are 4 different versions of your movie. There's the one you write, there's the one you shoot, there's the one that you edit, and then finally the 4th version is the one the audience sees. So that could be 4 different things. So I write, he runs out the door, and by the time it gets to you, the audience, seeing him run out the door, it might be he tripped across the hall and stumbled out the door. Why is that?
The director of, just a little case study of that is with the Ben Affleck starred in the film Daredevil. And if you look at, if you ever get the director's cut DVD, the writer-director, I forget his name right now. But he
wrote
that's right. And he wrote the script too. And he says, things happen on film and you forget why you even made it. He wanted to tell the story of attorney Matt Murdock taking on the case of a murdered prostitute that nobody cared about, and to tell that story as the key that leads Daredevil to the kingpin of crime. And that was the real story about standing up for those that nobody else would stand up for. And that's what he wanted. That's what fascinated him about Daredevil. Especially in their case, there was the studio.
Right. That's basically, that goes back to what I was talking about. The studio is not going to want to see that. Is not going to want you to shoot that movie.
It's not visually interesting to see somebody talking in a courtroom.
You can do that as a one-act play, like he was talking about. And you get 99 people to your AEA theater, and you do that story. But the big movie is going to be what we ended up with, which was.
By the way, another just example of that is it was very important for him that the character of Matt Murdock be revealed, that he finally meets a woman he can love, Electra, just my soulmate, and he hears the cry for help, and she says, "Stay with me," and he says, "Sorry, gotta go," and he leaves. Well, the studio said, "Wait a second, you got 2 beautiful bodies here, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner. We have to have a better scene." And so they actually at great expense, brought the actors back to reshoot and to put that scene in, because that's what the studios wanted to sell the movie. but it sort of violated, very much what you said, that, and then again, different viewers from what's going on in their life, they're going to see different things in either version, either the director's cut or the theater version of that film or other film.
Well, to go back to Metropolis for a moment, because I am very much enamored of the film, every cut that they made on this film made it stupider.
Yeah.
And
it's not new.
It is hard to imagine somebody sitting down with a pair of scissors and butchering this thing. It'd be like somebody saying, well, we don't like this smile on the Mona Lisa, so we're going to cut it out, and we'll just, we'll put a mask over it, so they won't see it, and they won't, be wondering about it. It is really a very difficult thing to try to keep that balance going, that tension. And sometimes your worst enemies are people who should be and could be your allies. And Sergio, did you have any particular problems, friction points? You don't have to name names, but did you have any particular problems in telling the story in the Action Bible the way you felt it should be told, and the way that, I think it was David C. Cook wanted it to be told?
Yes, at some points I would have some different takes in my head that I would call or write and say, can we combine action here? Because when I watch a movie, no matter who anybody thinks, I have to like it. And what makes me like it is if it's well directed in a way that I'm engulfed in it. And when I watch a movie and somehow the movie doesn't have the power to engulf me in it, I watch a movie as a spectator, and I no longer belong to it. So it's like to care about the bear and the guy who's running.
Exactly.
I want to be close to the guy, and I want to be close to danger, to feel the danger. So if you shoot from far away, I feel safe. So it's not really interesting, but if I'm right there, and I can see the bear ready to capture, to grab the guy, and the director does that. I remember seeing how they made Star Wars, and I remember seeing Skywalker. He was fighting with one of those other characters that had sticks or guns, whatever, and all he did on real life, off camera, like the camera filming the making of the movie, it showed a faraway shot of him rolling over, back and forth, and the character doing this, the enemy. So it did look interesting. But when you saw the movie, the camera shots were like worm's eye view, and then bird's eye view, and very close and cut, and then from his point of view, the other point of view, and drama and suspense. So you were in it. And sometimes a writer may be thinking of putting too much information into one page, and we artists, we like to choose one scene in the page that would be the money shot, and the rest of the panels would be supporting panels for that money shot. So if every panel is a money shot, the page becomes blah. But if you have a pow panel and some blah panels, that page becomes well balanced. So sometimes when you say Moses opening the river in the middle, you don't want to put a very small panel for that, and everything else happening. You want to determine. You want some room here for the punchline. So sometimes I've had that and disagreed with other things in it. When you put three people together, they may disagree, and you gotta have a meeting and decide what to do, right?